Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Then check out Deal to Heal Teas. With our inspirational teas, you're sure to find something to inspire you. That's dealtohealteas.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.com. Again, that's dealtohealteas.com. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you'll enjoy the Girl Dad Discussion podcast. I'm your host, Ernest James, and I believe the relationship between a daughter and her father is one of the most important relationships a young lady can have. And therefore, my mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by sharing the voices of girl dads to the world. So check out our podcast on every platform where podcasts can be listened to. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel. Again, that's the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with your host, Ernest James. Hey guys, this is Ernest James, host of the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. And I got a question to ask you. Could you buy me a cheeseburger? Better yet, could you buy me a value meal? Yes? Well, guess what? I don't need a value meal. However, for the cost of a value meal, you can support this podcast to keep us on the air. Just go to Patreon/Deal to Heal podcast and choose any one of the 3 tiers that's available. And if you just want to make a one-time donation, go to Cash App and make a donation to $EJames, the number 418. Make a one-time donation to the Cash App, or again, go to Patreon to support this podcast and keep us on the air. Thanks in advance. Be blessed. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Hey, welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast.
Thank you.
Ernest James, no problem. I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is healed, whole, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our new YouTube channel. We have changed the channel from the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast to the Deal to Heal podcasting network. So make sure you guys go check out our new YouTube channel, the Deal to Heal podcasting network, where we have already multiple podcasts on that YouTube channel so that you guys can check that out, including our partner podcast, the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James, which is myself as your host. And on that podcast, myself, along with other girl dads, talk about our relationships with our daughters, raising our daughters. And also, we also have daughters on to talk about the relationships with their fathers in order to combat the narrative of the absent father and the fatherless daughter. You guys will definitely enjoy that. So make sure you guys check that out. Also, if you guys have ever thought about starting your own podcast, you guys can get a copy of the ebook, Start Your Podcast Now, in only 3 steps. That's right. Start your own podcast in only 3 steps, which I wrote from my experience and from helping other people start their podcast. You can go to ebooksbyejames.com, ebooksbyejames.com. The link is in the description of the podcast. So make sure you guys go there and check it out. Also, you can win $100 from the podcast, right? But you have to stay until the end of the episode to find out how, right? So make sure you guys stay there uh, to the end of the podcast, which I'm sure you will. But stay to the end of the podcast, and I will tell you how you can win $100 from the podcast. Also, the product of the week. As you guys know, we are a self-sustained podcast, and the way that we stay on the air is by bringing you amazing products to purchase in order to support the podcast. And so this week's product of the week is our um, purpose planner and our purpose journal. As you guys can see, those that are watching on YouTube, our purpose planner and our purpose journal. I believe that we should journal our life, right? So that we know where we've been and where we are, and then also plan for our future. So that's the journal, purpose journal, and purpose planner, which both can be found on Amazon, and also the links are in the description so that you guys can look those things up and be able to get a copy of those. And I really believe that they will help you. So you guys might want to check it out. So make sure you go to the link in the descriptions and see everything that we have there, all the information that we have put there for you to find. But today, just like any other day, we are blessed. Excuse me. We are blessed with the guest, Miss Carlia. How you doing? I want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name right. Forgive me, I'm choking.
Yep, that's right. It's Carly.
Okay, cool. All right. So first of all, let me say thank you for being on. Because you could have been anywhere else with anyone else, but you're here with me and my listeners, and we definitely appreciate it. So thank you for coming on. So let's jump
Yeah, I'm
right
blessed to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem, no problem. You're gonna jump right in and do me a favor. Introduce yourself to my listeners and tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
Absolutely. So I am a holistic mental wellness coach. And essentially what I do is empower mental warriors, people struggling with anxiety, depression, and bipolar disorder to overcome their mind, the struggles of their mind without using medication. And I am so passionate about natural and holistic mental wellness because I've actually healed my own mind from all of these and more, but bipolar being the biggest one that is very rare for people to actually overcome that without medication. That it's very possible and it's very achievable. And I love sharing that knowledge and wisdom and empowering other people to do the same thing.
All right. So let's go back a little, right? Because I always know that there's a story before the story. I always know that there is a story of your story that happens before you get into doing the work that you do. So let's just go back a little and tell us a little bit about Carly and who you were prior to starting this journey. The work that you do, and why is it so important for you now to help other people get through it?
Yeah. So like all healers, we have those really dark times that bring us onto healing journeys. And my darkest days actually began when I was 12 years old and planning on taking my own life. And Ernest, I think it's so amazing that you also have the podcast about girl dads and father-daughter relationships, because I had a really turbulent relationship with my father. He was also undiagnosed with bipolar disorder. We didn't speak about mental health. We didn't know it was really a thing. And he and I really butt heads. So I grew up with all of these deep-seated beliefs that I was unloved, I was unworthy of love, because I wasn't receiving that from my family and especially from my father. Little did I know he loved me more than anything in the world. And now we've mended our relationship and he's one of my best friends. But growing up, I didn't feel that at all because we were both unwell. So my depression and anxiety morphed into a lot of different symptoms as I was growing up, from disordered eating to substance abuse to really intense anxiety. I couldn't leave my house without full face of makeup, and was still so afraid all the time of what other people were thinking about me. Just really intense social anxiety there through high school, which is normal to some degree. And I thought it was just normal at the time. But after coming out of it and reflecting back on how much it was affecting my life, I realized it was actually not at all normal, and that it's also really not normal to be suicidal at 12 years old or at any age. But
Right.
But ultimately, it wasn't until after I was through that I realized how dark and scary that time actually was in my life. So when I was 17, my dad was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And that's when everything started to really shift. It was like, okay, we're now aware that mental health exists. And it's not that this human was just angry and, being a jerk. It was that he was actually sick and struggling and needed help. So I started to develop some compassion, some forgiveness for him at that stage. But then I was diagnosed with not yet bipolar, but with ADHD, anxiety, and depression about 4 months later. And from there, it became my biggest fear in the world that I also had bipolar disorder. I was so afraid that there was a potential for me to maybe treat my children the way that I had been treated when I was growing up, and that I would maybe become this angry person who threw things and exhibited the behaviors that my dad had. And I was so afraid of that possibility. So I didn't take those diagnoses well. I really negatively stigmatized myself. And I thought this meant I had to take a pill every day for the rest of my life to manage the ADHD. And I had to take antidepressants to manage my mind. And I never wanted any of that. So I did use the ADHD medication for about a month. Again, this is like first year university for me. I found that though it made me better able to focus, and I was able to pay attention more in lectures and get some, more focused work done on essays and assignments and these sorts of things, I also felt a bit numb. I didn't laugh as much. I didn't have as much of an appetite. It was like changing all these parts of me that I hardly recognized myself some days. So I decided, you know what? The medication's there and I can use it as a tool, but I don't buy into the idea that I need to take this every day, even if that's what the doctors told me. So I started really cutting back and stopped using the medication, except for on brief occasions when I needed to study for, finals or write a lab report that I used to stay up all night doing. I was able to do it in the day if I had a little bit of the pill. And that seemed to be okay for a little while. I saw an ADHD coach who really helped me to understand the way that my brain works differently and how I can use certain tools to help myself focus and to keep myself organized in ways that are maybe different from what neurotypical people who are not neurodiverse tends to work for them. And he was my first interaction with coaching in any form, and it was absolutely transformational in my life, which is probably a big part of the reason why I now am a mental health coach. But when I was 19, so about a year and a half after that first diagnosis, I experienced my first and only manic episode. Now, I had already seen As Dark as It Gets back when I was 12 years old, planning to take my own life. I had been in and out of depressive episodes for years beyond that. And now I was experiencing mania. So that confirmed that I do have bipolar. You only actually have to experience mania one time to get the diagnosis. And I got it a little while after that. But basically that confirmed that my biggest fear in the world was true. And I realized this doesn't change me. This doesn't mean that I'm going to become some angry monster or that I'm going to treat people in a way that is unkind or hurtful. It just means that my brain has the capacity to experience this high, and I've already experienced as low as it gets. So how can I find a way to stay in between the two and ideally not need the medication? So I went to the hospital. I checked myself into the hospital because I was manic, I was dysfunctional. I was speaking a million miles a minute. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. And I didn't want to do something that I would later regret. So I brought myself to the hospital and basically told them, I'm not looking to be put on medication. I was actually about to head down to New Zealand on exchange, which is kind of what triggered the manic episode. Having never been out of North America before, I was so excited. It was the best time ever. It was the most exciting thing. I basically just told them I want to get to New Zealand without having a panic attack on the plane, and then I'll figure it out once I'm there. I don't want the meds for a long-term situation. So basically, they gave me 3 days worth of medication, one for that night, one for the next night, and one for my red-eye flight while I was on the plane, which was great because it set me back into a rhythm of actually being able to sleep. And I hadn't slept in a few days, which was, obviously very hard on my body and mind in its own way. So I got down to New Zealand and really began this deep healing journey. I decided, I kind of had 3 options. It was like, I can change nothing and continue on this like wild roller coaster that my life has been, and drinking a lot and, just seeking instant pleasures, but not actually feeling fulfilled and going in and out of depressive episodes, I can take the medication and know that it's probably going to numb me and that I'm probably not going to be really okay with that. It didn't really align with me. Or I can find a way to truly heal. So, of course, that's what I did. I went to New Zealand and I was already studying a double degree in biology and psychology. I started really diving into neuroscience and learning how our brains actually work and how we can heal them. I started applying these things to my life to experience that and turn that knowledge into wisdom. And I just became obsessed with facing my fears because I had just faced my biggest fear in the world and I found that I was totally fine. So I began immersing myself in the outdoors, moving my body all the time. Like I was really into exercise, started prioritizing my sleep routine, cut back significantly on alcohol, just made all of these shifts that I knew were going to be good for me. I ended up doing my yoga teacher training that year as well, when I was 20 years old. And a couple of years later, I had continued to kind of do the things that I knew were going to make me feel good the next day. A few years later, I reflected back and realized that I haven't had a manic episode since that one time when I was 19. I haven't fallen into a depressive episode since then either. And yes, life still looks like this, but it doesn't, have these huge highs and lows anymore, a lot more stable. So I realized that I had figured it out. And I'm so young. My dad was in his 60s when he was diagnosed, and I watched him suffer for years before that. So I knew, okay, I was 22 or 23 at the time and already realizing that, I had this wisdom that I had to share. It's my duty to show other people that healing really is possible. And it still took me a long time to actually get to the point where I began offering those services. I'm 27 now and just launched this business last year. So it was still, a long time coming, but I just know that it's my purpose on this planet to empower and inspire others to find natural mental wellness because it really is possible. And I am living proof that it works.
Yeah. And I'm glad. I'm so glad to hear that. Because you mentioned a couple of things that I like, and I think that it definitely makes a difference in what you're doing and who you are when it comes to. So I've shared my story all the time about dealing with suicidal thoughts and all of that, and no medication for what I was going through. I've worked myself through it, and I often talk about how I did it, but I'm not big on medication either. I've recently had some medication that I had to take, and they was like giving me like this same like you, like 3 months supply. And I'm like, dude, I'm not going to be on this for 3 months because I already see the pattern. You know what I mean? Because they gave me something and I was like, all right, this is not really working. And it's like, all right, well, we're going to give you this and that. And I'm like, well, no, I already see, how you just adding on. And I'm like, no. And so what I really started doing and what stuck out to me, what you said about, moving your body and getting out into nature, that's kind of what I did. I'm like, I'm gonna start drinking more water and start drinking more water. And I used to walk anyway, but I started walking more outside, not on a treadmill, but actually in the air and in the elements, and getting the sun on my face. And that did a whole 160, for how I felt every day. And you also mentioned about, as you're finding your cure, for yourself, you tapped into the things that you knew made you feel good. And I think that is such a big thing with a lot of us because we don't take out the time to realize what makes us feel good, what we like, what really makes us happy. And I think a lot of time we're chasing the thoughts of other people, like, oh, they did this, and or what society or social media tell us what should make us happy. It was like, no, really take out the time and figure out yourself, like what really makes me happy. What are the things that I enjoy? Because I believe that your mental and your physical and your emotional health, as you work on that, it changes your physical health as far as illness. And I'm not saying that it will heal
100%.
everything, but it definitely changes. the things that you do when you're just happy, when your spirit is happy, when you're emotionally happy, it changes things within you. And I really believe that. I want to touch on something because you talked about the holistic healing, and I don't really think that everyone knows exactly
Mhm.
what that is and what that means. So could you explain to us, like, what really is the definition and the experience of holistic healing?
Yeah. So essentially, the definition of holistic is just to look at the whole picture of something. So when we're talking about holistically healing, it's recognizing that you as a human are made up of, your entirety, body, mind, and spirit. You're not like your hand isn't separate from the rest of your body, just as your brain is not this separate thing that we can just target one aspect and everything else is going to fall into place. So to holistically heal is really about looking at all areas of your life. And this includes, of course, your brain health, but it's also your gut health, your physical health, your relationships, the way that you're spending your time in the day, what kind of energy you're consuming through social media and music and the news or whatever sorts of things you're consuming through your day. It's about really taking a holistic viewpoint of you and your life and bringing in this idea that every moment in your day has the potential to be healing. And if it's not lifting you up, it's doing the opposite. And when you start to really tune into these things, and like you said, like tune into what is actually making me feel good, and not only what's going to feel good right now, but what's going to be the best thing for me to do right now that's going to benefit me tomorrow. When you start to look at that and look at all the areas of your life and decide that you want to feel better tomorrow, and that's going to determine how you treat yourself as you're getting ready for bed tonight and your sleep routine, and what kinds of food you're putting in your body and how you're nourishing yourself, what kinds of conversations you're having with your loved ones and your friends, and how you want those relationships to flourish. It's going to start affecting every aspect of your life. And that's what it means to have this holistic approach to healing.
Yeah, I like that. I like that, and I think that all of those things work together. And like you mentioned, one of the things
Yeah.
that you mentioned is, which I tell people all the time, like what you allow in your gates, affects you mentally, affects your health, right? So
Mm.
your gates being your eye gates, your ear gates, your nose gates, like all of those senses that you're taking stuff in every day. So I'm like, be careful what you listen to, be careful of what you're watching. You know what I mean? Be careful of who you're paying attention to, because all of those things take a toll on you mentally, even if you don't think it is. And then when I talk to like young guys, a lot of time I try to, open them up to new ideas and new things. I'm like, hey, listen to this podcast, or watch these videos, and they're like, well, I'm not kind of really into that. And I'm like, you
Mm.
don't do it because you won't do it. And I'm like, and of course it's going to be foreign to you because you never listened to positive stuff before. You never listened to
Mm.
self-development stuff before. So in the beginning, yeah, you may have to force yourself to listen to it, but I promise you, once you start listening to it and applying those messages, and then allowing those messages in your body, in your mental, it'll start making a change in you for the better. But we have to be open to it, right? Be open to the information, be
Yeah.
open to the new experiences. And so, like you said, taking all those things as a whole person, bringing all those things in together for that holistic healing. So I wanna ask you also. I know your story. When you were telling about your story and how all these things work together, but just on a wider scale, a person that's listening
Mm.
to you is wondering, okay, how can this work for me? How important is this? Me taking this journey is going to be for my own healing and my personal healing. So, what would you say to that person? Just like the power of this journey that you're on. Of like, dude, if you took this journey, it's definitely going to make a
Mm.
difference. So what would you say to that person who just asking, like, what could this really do for me in my life?
Yeah. Well, speaking from personal experience and also from witnessing the transformation in my clients' lives, it really does create a transformation. It's you're rewiring your brain and you're rebuilding your life into one that is conducive to your healing journey, you know? So it can be uncomfortable at first, and it can be, you know, challenging to really dive into the things that are maybe habits that aren't serving you, that are maybe relationships that are not helping you to move forward with your healing journey, that are maybe the places that you're hanging out. Like it is uncomfortable to look at all these places that can be bringing out those shadow sides in us. But when you actually start to analyze your life and start to make these changes and really put in the effort and the dedication, it is just the best thing you could possibly do for yourself, because it's not, this style of healing is not a quick fix. It's not like, you know, you start taking this pill and probably in 2 weeks, you're going to be feeling significantly different. It's like, it requires consistent, steady dedication and effort. And some days it can be really hard to motivate yourself to do the things that you know you need to do, because it's easier to just sit on the couch and eat comfort food and, you know, let yourself kind of wallow in your emotions. But that's not going to make you feel any better tomorrow. So it really is about building a sustainable lifestyle. And when I say sustainable, I'm not even talking about the environment, though we do know that people who have higher levels of well-being also make better choices for the environment. But sustainable meaning that it's no longer something that takes work. It's just something that you're regularly doing because it's your routine. And because you're doing it all the time, you get to feel good. You get to feel fulfilled. You get to feel happy and stable and well, and not need to rely on a pill that has the certain side effects that you may not be desiring, like myself. So it's different for every single person, because, you know, Ernest, your healing journey is going to look a lot different to me, and my specific needs of my body and mind are going to look very different to you or to any of my clients. But when you start to really tune in and learn, this is what feels good for me, and therefore I'm going to do it because I love myself and I deserve to feel well tomorrow, it's so worth it to continue putting in that effort and taking those steps.
Yeah, and I love that what you said about feeling good tomorrow, like thinking about actually what tomorrow brings, right? So I made a video not too long ago that says, what are you doing with your 24 in 24, right? So what are you doing with this 24 hours that you have in 2024, you know? And so it was just like, not just living for the moment, but actually planning out, what do I want my tomorrow to look like? So let me start planning for my tomorrow today, so I can start off tomorrow on a high already. You know, I can start off tomorrow doing the things that makes me happy, doing the things that, you know, is going to benefit me on tomorrow. Again, adding to that happiness. So I love that, you know, feeling better tomorrow, like thinking about tomorrow today and how we want to feel and how we want to experience tomorrow while we're still in today. Because I think, and I if I remember, I probably heard it somewhere, that even how you go to sleep affects how you wake up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like what you're watching on
Absolutely.
TV, or what's going in your spirit or in your mind when you go to bed, you know, it affects you while you're sleeping, and then it also affects you when you wake up the next day. You know, so it's like, okay, don't watch a scary movie and then go to bed, because you're gonna be uneasy in your sleep. You know what I mean? And then you wake up, you know, in the middle of the night, or wake up in the morning and feeling tired before your day even started, probably because you've been wrestling, you know, with your thoughts all night from what you were watching before you actually lay down. So I really like that, really taking out the time to think about, you know, how do I want to end today so that it get the results I wanted to begin tomorrow. I think that's a good thing. So
yeah, and even on a physical level, having a beautiful morning starts the night before. So it's even doing simple things for yourself, like making it easy to do the things that you know are good for yourself. Like if you're trying to exercise in the morning, put out your workout clothes the night before and have your gym shoes ready. Or, you know, prepare your coffee, or I don't actually drink coffee, but your chai or cacao or whatever that morning beverage is. Get all the steps ready the night before, so it's so easy for you to just rock up and make your morning easier. Or put out your meditation cushion the night before, so that you don't have the excuse of, oh, well, it was a lot of effort to, you know, set up my space or to get out my clothes. I couldn't find my gym shorts or whatever it is. Reduce all of those barriers to access and just make your morning easier by setting yourself up the night before. And then, like you said, you know, instead of watching a scary movie, like we're not saying don't watch a show, but watch something that's going to help you relax. And then maybe read a book or do some light stretching or do something that's really going to calm your body down before you actually get into bed. Think about the beautiful moments in your day so you go to bed feeling, filled with gratitude, and then you will have a much better sleep. Your digestion will be improved. You'll get that deeper REM and you'll wake up feeling more refreshed.
Yeah, yeah, and I love even the thought of that. I have a friend who she doesn't. I have one friend that has a TV in every room, right, including the bathroom. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So there's a TV in every room. But then I have another friend. She has TVs, but she doesn't have a TV in her bedroom, and she did that on purpose. She's like, "There's no TV in my bedroom, so I can always, go to sleep." And I'm like, man, I love that thought that like your bedroom should be a sort of a chamber away from everything. That should be like the safest space in your home, because that's where you find your rest. And so even monitoring what you allow in your bedroom, so even though right now I do still have a TV in my bedroom, but that is something I plan to get rid of, not get rid of it, but take it out of my bedroom and don't have it in my bedroom. And that is something that I want to do. And I'm sure I'm going to do it. But I want to talk about something a little bit, because you mentioned, going back to the beginning, even your bipolar disorder and being able to be medication free. So I definitely want to talk about what does that look like. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about anxiety, because I've never had it. But I was talking to my nephew, and of course I'm not medically trained or anything like that. But I was talking to my nephew who deals with anxiety, and at least his type of anxiety come from a lot of unknowing, so it's like a lot of worry about, what's going to happen. And so when I began to talk to him, I'm like, well, nephew, from my understanding, from just listening to you, a lot of your anxiety comes from the not knowing, because you have no direction. Like you don't know. You know what I mean? You don't know what you want to do. You don't know where you want to go. You wake up every morning just like, whatever the day has. And I'm like, I think you need to take time to really plan. Again, going back to that, what are you doing? You're 24 and 24. I think you really need to take out time to plan out what you want your day to look like. And so you minimize, at least in his case, you minimize the places where your mind can wander to the what ifs, because you have direction.
Yeah.
I'm like, you need to take out time and really kind of be like, all right, this is what time I'm gonna wake up. This is what I'm gonna have for breakfast. This is how long I'm gonna work out, whatever that is. Because from just talking to him, again, like I said, this is his case. I'm sure it's not everyone's case that deals with anxiety, but in his case, I'm like, you have too much freedom, right? You have too much free time, too much free mind space. You know what I mean? Like, you're just free out here, and that's what's causing you anxiety, because you have no structure. You have no boundaries to your life. So, but from your point of view, even with the having dealt with anxiety, could you tell me a little bit about what anxiety is, and even how it affected you, and what are some of the things that you use to even deal with that?
Absolutely. So you made a really important point when you were speaking about anxiety kind of being this like fear of uncertainty. And anxiety is very future focused. So kind of the biggest difference, other than obviously the emotions and feelings that you're experiencing with depression and anxiety, is that depression is very backwards focused. It's very focused in this thing has happened. And obviously you're also feeling low and you have low mood and there's all these things, but it's very backwards focused about things that have already happened, feeling regret, feeling guilt, feeling sad, feeling remorse, all of these emotions. Whereas anxiety is very future focused. It's very, what if this happens? There can be a lot of catastrophizing and a lot of fear about the uncertainty of the future. But the thing is that even if you do have a really structured plan, which actually a lot of people who struggle with anxiety, myself included, I'm very organized and I like to have my day planned out. And I do tend to know what I'm having for my meals the next day, just because that's the organization I like to have. And I don't like to leave anything to have to think about it too much. I just like to plan it, and then I know, and it's good. And I don't have to continue, going over it in my mind. But it can be really helpful to do that. But at the same time, we never are certain about what's going to happen. You know, you can have a really structured day planned out, and maybe one of those things is involving another person and they change their plans. Like, you know, Ernest, you could have changed this podcast time last minute, and I can't control that. And so there needs to be a balance of accepting that the future is uncertain and that everyone is experiencing this same uncertainty, and also minimizing those areas where you know they're trigger points for you. Like for me, because I struggled with disordered eating for many years, it's a big thing for me to know what I'm having for food the next day, because I need to know that I'm going to be nourished and that I have everything I need in the fridge. So I do go to the shop fairly often, but it's not something that negatively affects my life. I found a healthy way to manage that. But it's looking at whatever those trigger points are for you and trying to minimize them. Now, this is obviously on a very physical level. Anxiety is also, it's a very physiological response. It's actually coming from a place of a heightened nervous system. So there's a lot of things we can do that are actually nothing to do with planning or with targeting the anxiety directly that can help to tone down our nervous system. Things like deep breathing, practicing yoga and mindfulness, looking at our gut health as well. Our gut health is actually very interrelated to our brain health. We have a whole nervous system in our gut. And it's why people with anxiety struggles often also struggle with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and various digestive issues, because they're so interlinked. So it's a very broad topic, anxiety, because there's a lot of different areas that it affects us. But ultimately this feeling, it's like a feeling of something's going to go wrong, and you're kind of looking for the thing that could be going wrong. And it's also why a lot of people with anxiety end up we all do this as humans, like making stories and assumptions about something that someone else might have thought or said. Or, you know, if someone cuts you off in traffic, you make an assumption that they're a jerk when actually maybe their wife's in labor and they're rushing to the hospital, and you just never know what's actually going on. But with anxiety, our brains tend to make up stories that seem so real and so logical, because we're looking for a reason why we feel this way. It's like the anxiety is already present. There must be a reason why I feel this way. That must be the reason. So it's kind of a double-edged sword of needing to really look at it from, again, this holistic viewpoint, and look at, where is this actually coming from? Is my nervous system heightened and I need to do some work there? Are there actually things in my environment that are causing me this uncertainty and leading to these trigger points? And is that where I need to focus? And generally it's a bit of both. It's usually not one or the other, but actually a combination.
All right, good. I'm glad I asked that, because I think that'll be helpful for my nephew to be able to go over the things that you said and see how that helps him. So before we get out of here, I want to talk about we talked about living with bipolar disorder, but medication free. And I think that's so important, because, like I said earlier, like they just press medication for everything, and I always think about the one stand-up comedy routine that Chris Rock did, and he was like, they don't heal anything anymore, like they just make you live with it. They just make you able to live with it. And so they just constantly give you these medications that don't heal you from what you're whatever your illness is. It just manages it.
It's a band-aid
in order to keep you on the medication, and like I said earlier, with my last time at the doctor's visit, he's like, oh yeah, well, take these. And I'm like, dude, I'm not finna do that, so I just have to figure it out.
No.
So it's been working. Like I said, drinking more water for one, and then just being more active and exercising. And has been working for me, and not even changing my diet. My diet is pretty much still the same. I still eat the same, but definitely that water intake, and not so much of sugary drinks and things like that. I did change that, but that's all that it took. It was like, dude, I don't need all these medications. And then I'm just gonna throw this out there, and then I'll move on. The medication he put me on was $600. I'm like, dude, I'm not
Yeah.
$600. I'm just, that's what
You
really
could
made
spend
me
that
like,
money
all
on a
right.
program that actually shows you how to heal and you won't need it anymore.
Yeah, and that's why I was like, dude, I got to figure this out. You know what I mean? Because I'm not
Yeah,
going to be, number one, I'm not going to be
100%.
on meds, for long term. That's number one. And then especially a
Yeah.
med that
Yeah.
costs, half my rent. You know what I
That
mean?
much
It's
money.
like,
Yeah.
so, but
No
with
way.
you were able to heal yourself and, to get off the medication and, to live, of course, still with bipolar disorder, but in a way that you're able to manage it, in a holistic way, in a wellness way. So tell us a little bit about what that looks like in your everyday life now, just to be able to move how you want to move. And like you said, taking that time, when you actually thought
Mm.
about like, wait a minute, I haven't had an episode in a while, like I haven't felt, uneasy or whatever in a while. I must be doing something right. So what does that look like
Mm.
now? Like in your day to day, just like, you know what, I'm good.
Yeah. So I do just want to touch on, I don't consider that I ever got off medication. I consider that I never really used it. I had 3 days worth and that was it. So I don't ever
Yeah,
say that I was actually on medication. I think
right.
stopping medication is probably actually a lot harder and a longer journey than not getting on it to begin with. So I will say that I know that it is possible for people to stop their medication, but that's actually not necessarily what I experienced. I just chose to not go that route in the beginning,
Right.
other than those 3 days. Um, so what that looks like for me is I have a pretty strict self-care routine, essentially. And this is, again, taking a holistic viewpoint. I have what I call my 7 pillars of mental health, which are basically, it's honestly just taking care of yourself, your basic self-care needs that somehow get so pushed under the rug when we have busy lives and we're prioritizing, relaxation in the form of TV and junk food and these sorts of things. But ultimately, it's making sure that I'm eating right, exercising every day, prioritizing my sleep, getting into nature is a really big one for me. Spending time with people that I love and that I know love me. Involving myself in my spiritual practices. So I'm a yoga teacher and I have a strong spiritual practice, and that can also be religious if that's what resonates with you. And taking time out to have proper rejuvenating rest. And for me, this might be taking a bath with candles or just letting myself have a day where I don't have any plans and I just let myself rest and have a self-care day. So building all of these things into my routine means that I can live a happy, healthy, high functioning life without needing to rely on medication. And it also really involves tuning in and like deeply being in tune with your own body and mind. For me, because I have, my brain has the capacity to experience extreme highs and extreme lows. It means knowing where my baseline is and noticing if I'm feeling a little bit higher, if I'm speaking a little bit faster. I mean, you can already hear this is me speaking normally. I'm just a fast talker, and that is what it is. But I know if I'm having a day where I'm feeling a little bit elevated, okay, well, I'm going to exercise super hard today. I'm not going to have any stimulants. I'm going to limit my sugar intake. It's noticing what I need to bring myself back to baseline. And conversely, if I'm feeling a little bit low, maybe, I'm still going to need to move my body, but maybe I'm not going to push myself as hard. I'm going to be a little more compassionate with myself. I'm going to have an extra thick cacao and, have a little bit more chocolate and just treat myself with a little bit more compassion because I need that tenderness. So again, it's just really tuning into what I actually need to keep myself at baseline. And this looks different for everyone, but that's what I found really works for me, is upholding that routine and remaining in tune with what I really need.
I love it. I love it. And I think to me that getting out in nature, I think that's the one thing that a lot of us is missing, especially those of us that live like in the big city or around the big
In a
cities.
city.
I'm
Yeah.
right outside of Chicago, and so I definitely, in the city life, but to be able to go to a forest preserve or to a park or outside, space and actually walk and just be in nature, the fullness of
Yeah.
nature and the kind of away from the hustle and bustle of the city. It definitely takes a toll on your mental and on your body to just really be able to relax. And like I said, I used to walk on my treadmill. I used to do my 30 minutes on the treadmill every day. And then one day I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go outside and go, walk this trail that's by my house, and just walking that trail and actually walking in nature, and even seeing a deer, right, seeing the deer and the ducks and stuff. And it's just like it just changed my whole, my whole being. And so now I don't even get on the treadmill. I'm like, I walk every day outside, even in the wintertime. I even posted some videos this past winter. I was like the only person out there walking this trail in the snow, But I'm like, I got to get outside. I got to get out in
so
nature, because it just makes me feel so good. So yeah, definitely. Last thing I want to hit on before we go. You mentioned about your program. I want you to tell us a little bit more about the program, and then you also mentioned about a guide that you have, that I definitely want our listeners to be able to learn about, and that way they can get their hands on it. So tell us a little bit about your program and also about the guide.
Absolutely. So my program is called the 8 Simple Steps to Naturally Heal Your Mind. And essentially it walks you through everything that I've been speaking about. It's all about getting into the root of what's going on for you, of where these emotions are coming from. We work on really like diving into those, feeling them in our body, releasing them, and then building a whole lifestyle based around your healing journey. So it's bringing in the 7 pillars that I talked about, and just so many more aspects of what makes you you, and how we can bring in all these moments of our day to be conducive to healing in a way that is personal to you, it is sustainable, and you're going to be able to maintain it long term. So we're not making drastic changes overnight, but making bite-sized little changes every day to actually work on healing our minds in a lasting way. And this is completely based on bridging that line of where science and spirituality come together, because there's so much wisdom in spiritual teachings that have been passed down for thousands of years and through generations. And now science is showing us that there's all of this backing for all these things that have been said, like the connection with nature, for example, and like the way that we treat our bodies with nourishment and practicing mindfulness, and all of these things that we have both sides now saying this is the way to find healing. So my program essentially teaches you not only the knowledge behind why these things work, but how to embody that as wisdom. And then I am your personal guide to be helping you fine tune these things in your life and holding your hand along this journey. So that's essentially the program. It's 4 months, and there's online modules that are the educational piece. And then there's also one-on-one coaching with me, where we talk about how to apply these things to your life and what that's really looking like. The guide that I have is kind of a synopsis of the first step. It's called The First Step Towards Overcoming Anxiety, because even though it helps with much more than anxiety, I find that anxiety is the thing that really sucks, and it's loud, and it's always there. There's always this worry when you're feeling anxious. So it's nice to kind of start to attack that one. And the guide is actually all about cultivating self-love, which is step 1 of my program. So you can find that guide at my website, which I'm sure it'll be in the show notes, but that's Manas Mastery, MANAS Mastery.com. And there's a free guide there if you go /freebie to find the first step towards overcoming anxiety.
All right. So first of all, I want to say thank you for being on, and thank you for sharing your story and your information. I think is lovely. And I think that I know I've got something out of it just by having this conversation, and a little bit of something that I can talk to my nephew about and make sure that he gets the freebie, to help him with his anxiety. So I thank you for that resource. I want you to have the last word, right? And I want you to leave us with a word of inspiration, motivation, however you feel, right? Leave us with a word, and then also leave us with your social media handles and things of that nature, so we can make sure we follow you, and where we can reach out to you for those who maybe want to connect with you to be part of your program. So I want you to do that for me. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about that. To my listeners, first of all, let me say thank you guys for hanging out with us, this long, and really, listening to the podcast even thus far. I want to make sure that you guys are staying in touch with us and staying in touch with us with our websites. We have our main website, which is the Deal, Heal, Fulfill dealhealfulfill.org. Of course, that's based off of our mission, which is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, right? So dealhealfulfill.org, that is our main website, which have most of everything about us, what we do, the workshops, the podcasting, the products that we have. Definitely you can find all that information. Also, I am a speaker, so I do go to schools and churches and organizations to speak. So if you would like to have me to come out as a speaker or to facilitate a workshop for you, you can go to dealhealfulfill.org and you can find a booking there, or just email me at info@dealhealfulfill.org in order to find out how to have me come out and to be a speaker at your next event. Also, check out our inspirational t-shirt line at the number 2, healtees.com. That's deal2healtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. Make sure you guys go check us out at deal2healtees.com. And also, ebooks by ejames.com is where you can find our ebooks. I mentioned one of them earlier today about starting your own podcast. To start your podcast now, ebook is there, as well as some other ebooks that I've written, but I made it real simple. Just go to ebooks by ejames, which is me, ebooks by ejames.com, in order to check those out. So make sure you guys are checking us out on our websites. Also, for the last year or so, I've been blessed to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops every quarter of the year. And we talk about forgiveness, what it is, what it's not, forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, what it means to forgive, right? And I think this is a very important conversation for us to have. And so we have these workshops. They're virtual, so you can do it on the phone. You can take part on the phone or on your laptop. They're absolutely free. So go to forgivenessmission.com in order to register for the next workshop. So whenever you're listening to this, either a workshop just ended or is one coming up. So make sure you go to forgivenessmission.com to sign up for our next workshop, or just go to Eventbrite and look up Forgiveness Workshop, and you should be able to find us there in order to sign up and register for the next virtual workshop. Last but not least, I told you guys that I would tell you how you can win $100 from the podcast. You can win $100 by entering our super subscriber contest. So first, you must subscribe to our YouTube channel, to our Facebook page, and to our podcast on Spotify, and then text the word WIN, WIN, to the number 866-326-0730 to qualify to win $100. The contest is random and it's ongoing. So once you're in, you can always win. So again, just text the word WIN, WIN, to the number 866-326-0730 to qualify to win $100. And make sure that when you text us, you leave us with your contact information so that we can contact you to let you know if you are our next $100 winner. So that being said, again, thank you guys for being on. I want to thank you for coming on and share your story with us and your information. And I know I took something away from it, and I'm sure that my audience did too. So I want you to have the last word. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I just want to leave everyone with the idea and the knowing that you can heal. It is so possible for you, and you are not defined by any diagnosis or anything that doctors or any clinicians have told you about the way your mind works. You have the power to write your story, and it's such an empowering thing to put yourself back in the driver's seat and decide that you truly want to heal in whatever way that looks like for you. So I would love to connect with you further. Follow me on Instagram. It's at manas.mastery. So at MANAS.mastery. And you can join my free Facebook group, which is called Holistic Mental Warriors, which is a beautiful hub for all things natural mental wellness. I'd love to see you there. Definitely go download my freebie and let me know how you find it as you start implementing these self-love techniques into your life. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for your time, Ernest. This was such a pleasure.
No problem. No problem. We can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Until next time, you guys be blessed. Hey guys, I know you're enjoying the podcast. However, don't forget to join our text line at 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730 in order to receive text messages with new events and things that is going on and new episodes as they release. All right, see you in a minute. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.